Hello, my name is Nicholas Keppel. I study marriage and family in Austria at the International Theological Institute. The school was founded by John Paul II, and I would like to speak today on a topic, something that he wrote. It's commonly called Theology of the Body. I would like today to speak about this work that he presented to the church in the first years of his pontificate, from 1979 to 1984. 5 years. He delivered a catechesis every Wednesday, with a couple breaks in that 5-year period, that is commonly called a theology of the body. So today I would like to speak a few words on this topic. So John Paul II begins his catechesis with the words of Christ. He takes it from the Gospel of Matthew, where Jesus is speaking with the Pharisees, and the Pharisees come to him and ask him, is divorce allowed? Like, can we get divorced? Because Moses allowed us to get divorced. But Jesus refers them to the beginning, to Genesis, where Genesis says God created them male and female. And so by referring to Genesis, Jesus is bringing the Pharisees and all of us with the Pharisees back to the beginning, to God's original plan for the world, for man and woman, for human love. And this is where John Paul II takes off from. He decides to do a big analysis of this beginning. What was God's original plan? So that's the first part of his catechesis, is called Original Man. The second part of his catechesis, John Paul II also takes from Scripture, is where Jesus is speaking in the Sermon on the Mount, and he says, "You've heard it was said not to commit adultery, but I say to you, even if you lust after a woman, you commit adultery in the heart." So John Paul II, in this middle section, refers to historical man, sinful man after the fall, after original sin. And this is the second part of his catechesis. The third part of this beginning is eschatological man. So it's when Jesus refers to heaven, to the glory, to our hope, the resurrection of the body. And John Paul II will reflect, what would this resurrection of the body mean based on Scripture? So these three parts, the appeal to the beginning, the appeal to the historical man, and the appeal to our future resurrection, form a triptych. John Paul II calls it a triptych of Christ's words. So a triptych, if you know what that is, it's an altar piece. It's an artwork that goes above an altar. It has 3 sections. And so these 3 sections form what could be called the theology of the body. This is only actually in the first half of the entire catechesis John Paul II gave, because this first half, which is made of these 3 parts, comes first, and then the second part is the analysis of the sacrament of marriage, and a final part on Humanae Vitae. So John Paul II lays the foundation with the first 3 parts, with the theology of the body. He analyzes the sacrament of marriage, and then he applies it to the magisterial teaching in Humanae Vitae, which is an encyclical written by Pope Paul VI in July 1968. So this entire catechesis is bound up together for 5 years. It's all connected. It's all part of one cycle that Pope John Paul II gave us. So my job right now is to give you the words that John Paul II gave, to not add my own thought, but to give what John Paul II has already taught us, and to try to explain that. So yes, what else? So the first 3 sections, the beginning, the history, and the eschaton, the future glory, could be considered an anthropology. An anthropology meaning a study of man. John Paul II is seeking to give us what he calls an adequate anthropology, a study of man that is adequate, that is it gives us the full vision of man. Because in Humane Vitae by Paul VI, he said, in order to understand these questions of human procreation, of human life, we need an integral vision of man, a total vision of man that is not only partial. It doesn't have partial vision like biology would have a partial knowledge of man, or psychology would have a partial understanding of man, but an entire vision of man that includes all the truth about man. And so John Paul II is trying to give us this in order to understand Humane Vitae. So it could be, he actually says in his very final catechesis, number 133, in the translation by Dr. Michael Baldstein into English, in the catechesis number 133, John Paul II says that all of the questions of theology